On today's show, we're going to be discussing, usually most people that have issues with immigration will bring up a case, and I want to hear it from uh, second generation Latino or Mexican American, first generation immigrant, um, Mr. YAMA Cool-TURE, not to throw you under the bus. And then I always try to play that devil's advocate. I actually almost got kicked out of an immigration conference because they said, okay, we're gonna pretend that one of the audience is gonna be a typical American, and then somebody else is gonna try to defend immigration and some type of amnesty. And I was like, okay, so if I'm gonna be a typical American, I'm gonna be like USA, USA. And when they asked me about how do you feel about illegal immigration, I said, hey man, you guys come from countries that are in chaos, and you come over here, and here there's rules, and the lights turn on at night, the police shows up. I'm not going to complain about the rules that do not let certain people in or that many people in. Like, they almost lynched me.
Oh, man.
You
played the part too well is what you're saying?
Huh?
You played the part too well? Is that what happened?
I played it too well, and all that my adversary could say is, this guy's an idiot. He didn't have a return. And it's like, when you start getting emotional, that's when you lose. So there should be, it's kind of like when people used to sit in the counters when African Americans weren't allowed to go into certain restaurants. They taught them how to take a punch to the face. Latinos and progressives should be able to take a punch to the face when someone makes a good case against massive immigration. So today we're going to be discussing limited resources. So when someone says, the reason that there's a cap on the amount of Mexicans that come in, Filipinos, Chinese, and Indians, is because there's only so many resources, there's only so many visas available, or whatever. Is that a strong enough case to make, or it should be open borders and everybody in, and then we can all duke it out? Who wants to go first? Mr. playing on his phone.
Then we have I'll go first because I'm playing on my phone.
Okay.
Has this started? Oh, started. Oh, we're on.
We already started.
Yeah.
Get on the bus. So we're leaving without you.
I don't know.
There's a deportation.
I don't know. Yeah. So this is my first thing. I think we need to double check. I don't know if they actually have a Mexican quota. I'm not clear, but I haven't looked at immigration lately. I think what they have is, they do have the family relationship thing, and so you can sponsor a relative, right? So again, if you're more likely to be, let's say, at least in Texas or California or other parts, and or in Texas, you're Mexican American or whatever, or you're first generation Mexican or an immigrant, you're going to more likely to sponsor another, Mexican or Mexican American or Latin American, let's say. So I think that's one of the primary ways that people are becoming at least permanent residents and eventually citizens. But there are visa quotas. You're right, for certain countries in terms of what do you call it? Specializations. Education.
Skilled.
Yeah. Right. Am I right?
Well, from experience, I worked at an immigration law firm, and what you find out is that the quota is the availability of being able to even apply. So if someone says, well, I want people to come legally, it's like, okay, if you are in Mexico and you go to the consulate and you say, hi, I am tired of living in this country, I want opportunities in America, how do I start the process to apply? They would put you in the line, and it would be all the way to Argentina, because there would be so many people trying to apply. And then they would sort you out based on income, on most likely class or race, on abilities. So you would have a very slight chance, if you were just a middle-class person with, middle education like everybody else, like just a college degree, you would have a very slight chance to be able to actually go through the process. Even though you're bringing your knowledge, your abilities, they don't want it from those 4 countries. If you do the same thing in Germany or in England, you actually have a chance to start the process. So you mentioned you can have someone petition you, but the laws are so messed up that when someone petitions you as an adult, it can take up to 16 years for you to be able to uh, get, it would be a temporary resident card. So you wouldn't be able to work or anything until 16 years. So by that time, you already
Your
figure out.
prime is gone.
Yeah, so it's a very difficult situation for people who come from those three and those four countries that they would consider like needy, or people are just jumping on top of each other to come over here. And then stable countries, countries that have a good economy, they don't want to come. So
Right.
they would say it's not racist. It's just that why would a European want to be here? But Europe is actually really struggling. There's people from Spain that they say is a beautiful place, but there's no jobs. So there's actually people who are illegally here from Poland, from Russia, from Israel, from all over.
You don't hear about those. They're Canadians. They're undocumented Canadians here, and so. But to your point, you can't even. So you've got many. You do have, for example, teachers. But they're HISD recruits. I know that because I work there. It's always recruiting in Spanish-speaking countries for teachers. These are people, with a bachelor's degree or more from Spanish-speaking countries. Spain, a lot of people from Spain come here for a couple of years at least. Ed in HISD and probably in California also. And so I've known them, and they continue to happen all the time. And there are probably people like this old gentleman, Edgar, you were talking about earlier, who, not Edgar, wasn't Edgar.
I never said his name, so let's move on. Edgar is the gentleman that is here, but he's under a different identity.
Okay, I'm sorry, but Edgar is there's no Edgar, right? I just made that up.
It's a fictitious character.
Just use Edgar, whoever he is.
Who the crap is Edgar? So let's say Edgardo. So Edgardo, this guy, the problem with this guy is that how is he here anyway? I want to know, is he teaching Spanish? Because that's how a lot of these Spanish get over here. A lot of very attractive, by the way, young ladies.
Let's not get personal. Like, we're not talking about anybody specific. Just in general, there's a lot of people that come here with, most people are actually not illegal. They're actually overstayed their visa. So that's not an illegal status. That's actually, it's just a discrepancy in their legal status.
Right.
So every single thing is a different crime or a different issue. So
and most people who come here, you're right, who are here who have
they're documented, but they're
not cross the border, right? They came here.
They were checked when they came. They just overstayed. So the crime is very subtle. And then even being here illegally is only a civil crime. Now the current administration is trying to claim that it's a federal crime or it's a terrorist act or something like that. That is completely.
Well, they toughened what I read. They have toughened it. That's since Clinton. Clinton started. He signed that bill that because Mr. Clinton was very sort of law and order kind of guy. A new strategy, Southern Democrat, and he came in. He sort of compromised with the Republicans on some of that. So you're right. It's stricter now, but the penalties for immigration and so forth have been getting harsher since then. And it goes through it'll get harsh and then it kind of levels out. Nothing really changes, right? And then someone comes in like right now in the case of but then after 9/11 you had changes again. And then with the current administration. So you're right. Yes, sir.
What's your stance? Like, according to you, should there be the ability for people to apply and be accepted, or should there be a cap? And the reason that I'm very sensitive about the cap from any country is that when Jews were fleeing German persecution, they were actually turned around, and a lot of them went back and got killed. So at that time, there was a prejudice against Polish, German immigrants, and most likely it was because they weren't WASPs, they weren't white American Protestants, and they're like, well, you're on your own. So there's always been a type of discrimination or hesitancy to bring in strangers to America. So from your perspective, what should be the stance that this country should take regarding legal or any type of immigration coming this way?
Well, I mean, I certainly think it should be open. You shouldn't have a quota for any country. I think that what you should have is, again, looking at qualifications. And that's the whole thing. There's the reason we have so many people here in America that are here undocumented, who are working construction and other jobs, that is because those similar jobs is because there's a need for them. The industry needs them, and or they're working in farming, in California or Texas, and so there's an incentive for them to come here because of that, and business needs them, and so there should be a way for them to come here and work legally, and maybe they're working legally for a certain period of time in a way that they're not being exploited by their employers, and they're able to benefit this country because while they're here, they're going to buy things. They also benefit their families, send money back. Also, it lessens the economic pressure on those countries that are being, economically affected positively in this case, because we've got all these documented people sending money back over there legally. We're also keeping track of people as they're documented. The thing is, when people, get in the shadows and so forth, and they're hiding out, if they do commit a crime, it's hard to track them because we don't have any paperwork on them. They don't have an ID. If you make it hard for them to get a Texas ID or driver's license, because they have to have all this stuff, because again, if they're working, we need them, right? I mean, if they're working in a restaurant, or of course, you saw the story. There's undocumented people working, at Donald Trump's Florida country clubs, whatever. So right now, we knew before that they worked at some of his other businesses. They're probably cleaning his bathroom right now, in Trump Tower, because it's easy to sort of put this on these people that are, they come in with some of them are, most of them are they can read and write, they're law abiding, they're Christians. I mean, these are kind of people that we've always wanted, right? So yeah, of course we should really open it up. But the problem is they're afraid that we just make it like that. Anybody that can get a job in America, if there's a sponsor, let's say they're a farm worker, they get a sponsor, they're afraid it's going to get browner, right? Because you're right. The Europeans don't want to come here. From Sweden, they don't want to come. From Norway, they don't want to come. From England, they don't want to come. So.
But so what do you think, YAMA culture?
Well, I think the process already by itself is pretty daunting. But let's go back to the question, which was, should there be a cap or a quota of specific nationalities? Is that the question?
Or is there another option where it's just anybody who wants to come can come, and then it becomes, one of the issues that is coming up now is multiculturalism. And they say multiculturalism actually is backfiring in Europe. So like Jose said, if the population changes or shifts, there's a fear that what people have built, or like D.L. Hughley would say, what they supervised,
The status quo.
would change. But there's people who say we build America. Actually, you build it on the backs of Chinese and African workers. So you can't say that the Anglo Europeans were the ones that built this. So, but they had the technology or the scientific know-how or whatever to make it what it is, and they're afraid that it's going to become a third world country by letting people from third world countries in. Is that a legitimate concern?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. That's like, that's like crazy, stupid talk from people. Uh, I mean, and whoever thinks, first of all, that just because we're brown, we're gonna, or whatever it is, culture, it's gonna make the whatever other country messed up. That's 100% baloney, baloney, and whoever thinks like that is a total piece of walking turd. Okay, because of the fact that it's bad people that make what you call it places bad. Okay, um, in places like Europe. Okay, all these right wingers, they keep on saying all this mess, and here in the U.S. also, they keep on saying this mess. It's the same story over and over. It's a broken record. These guys come from back in the 1800s. The Irish came and the Italians came, and all these guys don't know what being here in the U.S. is. All their little crap and all this stuff. Yeah, you put them in the ghetto because this first wave of generation doesn't have the quote unquote education or monetary level, to come here. If you're leaving your country, usually it's because of this. All right, the rich people usually stay in their own country. Okay, they're not going to come in droves to another country unless there's something really really bad because they're making money in their own country. You know what I'm talking about? So the majority, again, back to the people that usually, like wave immigrant or immigrate is because of this. All right, and when they come to whatever country it is, yes, the first generation, if you want to call it the first generation, they're gonna have a lot of problems adjusting. That's just the fact. Okay, it's not because they're dirty. It's not because of whatever. They're getting used to what they were used to, and changing to what their new ambiance is or their new spaces. All right, their kids' generations, and it takes, I don't know, 2 to 3 generations, perhaps, I don't know, um, to quote unquote assimilate to what the culture's asking for without obviously losing yours. That's what these people are saying. All right, these right wing piece of craps that are saying all this, like, oh no, they're what is it, making this into a third world country, whatever. No, they're not. No, they're not. Look around you. That's what you did. Okay, they are living in the island or the ghetto or whatever it is because that's what they can afford. All right, the what you call it, the ancestors of these people that are talking like that probably go back to New York to those little ghettos. All right, where you had 6 families living in one apartment and last names were Irish, were German, were whatever the heck they were. Okay? So, and look at what they've done. All right? Sure, there's some things, of course, there's some things that they brought from the home country, that they're not good, but it's not everybody. Again, it's one of those stereotypes of little bitty people or the minority that might have done something that these people are like, no, look at them, that's dirty, because they've gone to the ghetto itself where nobody's going to be spending money there. Okay, for example, if that's the thing we're going to be using, go to the Woodlands. Okay, we're going to say, oh yeah, the Woodlands, everybody wants to go to Woodlands. Oh crap, the Woodlands is full of what? Oh yeah, they're full of Mexicans. Oh, but with a lot of money.
He's talking about the north of Houston, where there's most of the wealthy people live. So you're saying that people would actually move to the Woodlands if they're racist because they're rich Mexicans, or they wouldn't move there?
No. I'm just using that as a comparison of people saying that the immigrants are dirty, all that stuff. Okay, because a lot of people look at uh, dirty and all that. No, it's just that's where they're economic, where they're able to buy an apartment or rent an apartment in a place where probably the city can't even afford or doesn't care to clean. All right, in comparison to the Woodlands, where you have money galore, or Katy, where you have all the Venezuelans that are moving to Katy. All right, it's not making it to the third world. On the contrary, it's making it, as not that that's going to be more diverse. It's just that it's a different thing, and it's not making it dirty. And the people are adjusting. They're like, oh, you know what? We adjust, okay, to this. We adjust to how if it's a four-way stop, we all stop, and then we ask, we adjust to the laws and all that kind of stuff. Okay, everybody wants to adjust to the laws, or to the culture that's around here. They want to. Perhaps they want to if nobody's looking, perhaps they want to go back to some things that they used to do. But the reality is that they know that if they mess up here, that the law will come. It's like, oh no, you know what, you got a fine right here. Oh no, it's a different type of culture they'll get used to. Not that they're trying to turn it to whatever quote unquote third world country it is that they think is going to happen. That's not happening.
Well, let me bring up a couple of things. There was a couple of statistics that I came across where they say that people think that immigrants are like 33% of the population, and they're actually only 13%. And then there was another one about immigrants commit less crimes than native population because of the same thing you mentioned, where if an immigrant does it, the law comes harder on them, and they don't want to mess it up for the rest of their family. So they avoid crime in a greater rate for the sake of staying in America. So, but I have seen people, and this is where self-criticism might be helpful. Well, we know of certain people of our culture or background where they just don't care. And I've seen people where they have 5 kids in a car and nobody has car seats or seat belts. I've seen people who do all kinds of crazy stuff that they might not even do back home. And then it's kind of like a rebellious thing. And then someone told me, I don't like being in America because back in Mexico, you can party until 4 a.m. every day and have a more laid back life. And here is all work. Here you have to work get up at 6 a.m. and you get back home at 8 p.m. and just work. So the Protestant ethic of America actually, you either make it or you don't. It's set up in a way that only the people who are like capitalists or very intense in their work ethic are actually able to succeed. If you take a very relaxed approach to American lifestyle, you might not be able to pay your bills. You might not be able to survive. So there are perks for staying back home. And then there's a misnomer that most people think that everyone in Latin America wants to move to the U.S. And that's actually not true. There's people who are very happy in their home country. And if they come out of desperation, or they come seeking other opportunities that weren't available. So this idea that people are just, ready to kill an American and take their place, it's an insane conspiracy theory. Like they always say that if you meet somebody in Latin America, they just want you for your papers because everybody wants to be here. And I've met quite a few immigrants that come here and they don't like it and they go back home because it's not the same type of culture, it's not the same type of environment that they've grown up in. What do you think, Jose? Is America really that attractive that like everybody wants to be here, or is it just select a group of people that want to even give it a chance, especially now?
Well, I certainly now I don't. Again, we have a good economy in America right now. The economy is also pretty good, in other first world countries right now. So you know, relatively speaking, you know, we don't have we're not in a depression. We're not in a global depression. So again, the point that you both made earlier is that there isn't that push. There, think about this. So in you know, Mexico, Latin America, Europe, there's plenty of people who are well employed, who are professionals, who have a life and a home and a family, and they're established. They have no interest in ever moving to America. Why would they? Why would we? We have no interest in moving somewhere else because we're established here. It's only a few people who are desperate, as you said earlier, very few people who at the very bottom of society, or there's, you know, we've got, you know, the high order professionals, you know, I'm talking about the high, we're talking about, you know, scientists and, you know, computer scientists, doctors, researchers, whatever, who are looking to come to America. Maybe they came here for an education and they stayed here. So, and we're always looking. I mean, I worked in the medical center for years. They're always looking for, we can't get enough PhDs in this country. We can't produce enough PhDs who are American grown. So we have to go to Europe. We have to go to China to get India, to get people that can work at, you know, in these institutions. At that level, people with PhDs are getting exploited at in the medical center because they'll come in for a few years to work on a grant, and then their sponsor, you know, the medical center, I've seen this many times, will just say, you know what, the grant's up, you have to go back to India, you have to go back to China. Happens all the time. There's no effort to give them a long-term, it's not a permanent situation, and they get disrupted because they do want to stay here. But they're primary investigators that are doing this research, who are usually Americans, 99.9% of them are Americans, know that they can get this highly expert labor force from Europe, from especially Eastern Europe, from China, probably Latin America, of course. I knew some of those, and India, and they're cheap. They're relatively speaking very, very cheap. And when they're done with them, they send them back. So there's exploitation done at all levels. So again, I think my point earlier is that if we open it up and see, look, if there's an industry that needs, if it's you know, the farms in California or in Texas, if it's the research centers, you know, for tech or biotech, or here in Houston, those kinds of places need these workers, then they should be able to come from whatever country they come from. So if they're coming from Latin America to pick fruit, you know, if the jobs are here, then they should be allowed to come here as quickly as they can and do it legally. Maybe it's temporary. Maybe it's but they're not exploited, and they do it legally, and we keep track of everybody. And I think that makes a lot more sense. And I think the economy would benefit. The economy is benefiting right now from all this labor, but they're in the shadows, and they don't get needed services. And we even have, as you've seen again on the news, we've seen the news if you've been following, there's many children who are American born, who qualify for benefits, everything from food stamps to, of course, Medicaid and so forth, are not taking advantage of those services. Their parents are not taking advantage of those services because they're afraid that they're going to get deported, they're going to get caught. That these kids legally are, you know, an education. There's fear. I don't know, that it's a lot of it's anecdotal, that as the administration has gotten tougher on immigration, that some kids are being kept home, that some kids are not going to school because the parents have a situation, whatever, that they're afraid that they send the kids to school. Maybe one of their kids undocumented, the other kid is documented, and of course the family's undocumented. They're gonna, and so they're kind of waiting out. Maybe they're holding them out for a year or more until we get a new administration. That's anecdotal evidence that that's what's going on. that kids are not in the system right now. They're not getting an education even. So there's a lot of negative factors. American citizens are not getting education because their parents are afraid for their status. Open up the borders to the extent that the people that come here are needed here, you know, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I can't, that's what happened before. All those people that came over here immediately found jobs in, as Yama was saying earlier, in you know, they moved into those tenements in New York City. They found jobs in all kinds. Again, yes, textile. They found jobs in all kinds of entry level manufacturing. All that we're talking about the late 19th century, the Industrial Revolution. America needed people to work, and America still needs workers.
But what about this thing about limited resources? Most people say, oh yeah, well, you bring everybody in and then there's not enough jobs, there's not enough welfare programs, there's not enough opportunities for the people who are from here. So it's okay for a country to have limited opportunities for outsiders to come in because they need to take care of the people who are originally from there. What do you think, Yama?
Well, I think when they're talking about the limited resources as in natural resources and all that, I think they're mainly talking about the urban areas. Okay, because there's a lot in every country. There's places where you can actually put people. I mean, let's be honest. Now, is it places where they can live? That's another thing. Is there places where they have to develop infrastructure? Of course. And all that, of course, is going to take money, and it's going to take people. You know, you're going to take people. You know, it's just normal human evolution. If that's what you want to talk is like population growth. Okay, I mean it's normal. All throughout the history of humanity, people have immigrated. It's just, I'm not going to say now, but it's been in the modern era that it's been a huge problem because there's people that want to make it into a problem. Okay, now when they're saying open borders, it's not saying, you know, a lot of people say, holy crap, open borders means like they just open the borders and everybody goes in. And the reality is that's not how it works. The reality is that it really takes a long time to even get, you know, if you're not one of the jobs like you mentioned that is in high need in the U.S. or in any country, immigration wise, they'll be like, you know, yeah, you can start, you know, getting in line and the whole paperwork, and we'll see when you're going to be able to come in, okay, for those high, you know, education jobs or whatever. Even for the manual jobs, they're still going to be like, well, we still going to see in a need to, or a need basis or day-to-day basis or something like that. So it's not just open borders per se. Okay. And about the limited resources, like I said, is there's places, you know, we're talking here in the U.S. I mean, what do people go to where the jobs are, you know, like in what is it in Minnesota, all these Somalians in Minnesota, like what is that, what are those people doing in Minnesota? Well, there's jobs, and then also there's jobs in the meat packing or whatever it is that they're doing over there, you know. And it was a community, there's a couple of people that they needed some work, and you know what, this is capitalism, and capitalism is going to say, you know what, we need the workers. And the people, you know, the people that we want to work here are, you know, we need them. So could you please loosen up a little bit for these types? And again, me as the company, I'll pay for the visas for these guys or whatever it is. Oh dang, if this is too expensive, then I'll get the other option. I mean, it's just capitalism, and I mean capitalism with humans. I mean, it's what you need and how much it costs. And if you can't survive, you go down. If you can't quote unquote cut the costs, you're going to go down. So it's the limited resources in the U.S. There's a lot of land. Okay, obviously some of that land obviously is protected and all that, but the reality is there's possibilities. It's obviously hard. You're not just going to make a city overnight, but there's, if we're talking about space, there's space. But if we want to make life meaningful for the people that come in, that's the tricky part. That's the tricky part. You go to the northeast, there's a lot of space there, and there's a lot of the Anglo-Saxons are not reproducing, so they're losing a lot of people that could be working up there. So that's a place where immigrants can go in there and they're just like, oh, we need. In fact, there's countries that actually are calling in immigrants. They want to reproduce, so they can actually fill up the jobs and the population, because all of a sudden they're starting to not grow. Like I think in the Scandinavian countries, like I think they only have one kid per household now, or something like that. I don't know. That's my thought.
Well, but if we look at human history, as animals, we've been migrating throughout the centuries to wherever the resources are. So to suddenly say you're not allowed to migrate because this is a sovereign nation and nobody's allowed in, it's very feudal and very tribalistic, because again, you can't have capitalism and tribalism at the same time. Because if all you care is about money, then like you said, having the workers would bring about the outcome that you want. And then you can't have democracy if you're going to have tribalism. Why? Because democracy requires for every citizen to have a vote. And then what's crazy, they're trying to, they claim they want to outlaw anchor babies or the children of immigrants being citizens. But if you do that, it's just really weird. I don't know if this is true, but I've thought about it. So let's say that they deport the family of a child that was born here. The kid actually goes to foster care, because in America they're not gonna deport the children. So
they'll deport. They can send if the parents don't. They'd have to sign the kid away. They can deport. I think they can deport the kid. I think you're wrong about that. It's not like deporting the kid. The parents would have to sign the kid away. I mean, I worked child welfare, so I know a little bit about that.
I was like, that would be crazy.
You can't just take the kid away.
But you're deporting an American because of his parents? That's like illegal.
Yes, they're deporting his parents. What happens is the parents have to take the kid, right? Exactly. It's totally unfair, but that's what happens to a kid. You're right. The kid gets deported. You're right. But the parents, you're right. At the same time, the parents could say, "Oh, we'll let them stay with family." But the thing is, if I'm a parent and I get deported, I'm taking my kids back to Mexico. I'm sorry, I'm not letting them stay in America. I think that's just. I think that's just neglect. Or
there would have to be something wrong with the parents. Like if the parents are criminals.
There's something wrong with the parents. Exactly. There's a situation with plenty of situations where there could be something wrong with the parents. But yes, the parent. The big cruel system, okay, that often will harm, like I said earlier about the kids, they're probably not getting food stamps right now, or they're not getting medical care because their parents are afraid to get those services, although these kids are citizens and are legally have a right to these services and these benefits.
Let me ask you this. Is it true, what I would consider conspiracy theory or some weird information out there, that the government makes money for every American citizen? Is it true that we're worth so much money based on the Fed or whatever? Because if that's the case, they actually would like for immigrants to have their children in America because they can make money out of that person either through the prison system or through taxes or through giving them a number and using them somehow. Like, because then they would say, what is the benefit of giving undocumented immigrants the ability to have their children be citizens other than in 21 years they can petition their parents? I know that it's an outdated law, but in the past they needed people and they wanted people to come and have their children here and be part of America. Now that they don't want people here of certain races, what is the benefit for the country to allow that?
Okay, so let me just clarify something. Okay, so that's the 13th, 14th Amendment. I'll double check. Either one. I think it's the 14th Amendment. The issue is a simple one. Okay, so it has nothing. It has everything to do with race. Okay, it has something to do with slavery. So what happened was you had the 13th Amendment, which outlawed slavery, but that really wasn't enough. The 14th Amendment basically says, that everybody who is born here is a citizen and has the rights, because they wanted to make sure that it was totally clear that all these African slaves who had been here for generations were as American as whites were. Okay, so that amendment that clarified that was to make sure that their rights could be protected. And but of course, especially in the South, they got around with that with laws that they passed at state level and so forth. So the issue that is in the Constitution. So this sounds like it does sound like conspiracy theory about why the government makes money from. Obviously, we all have a value of some kind, based on our abilities and our contribution to. And I'm sure there's some kind of actuary table out there that somewhere, my life insurance company has figured out what I'm worth. Okay, whatever. But I don't think that's the issue right here. We have a law that was necessary in the Constitution. It was put in there. An amendment needed to be necessary to make sure that African Americans' rights were protected. And that was the primary reason that existed. And what's happened since then, of course, it is always about racism. And to get your point earlier and Yama's point earlier, the reason they make up all these, they make this crap about, we're going to throw into third world country. What was the other thing Yama was talking about? Well, we were talking about earlier about
taking other people's jobs.
I can't remember. What were we just talking about?
They're taking other people's jobs. They're destroying the
they're destroying the thing. Oh yeah, that they're destroying the communities, or that they're the resources.
Criminals.
No, we're a huge country. There's plenty of room. It's not that kind of resource issue. Yes, are there resources at resource pressures put on cities, and cities know about this. But at the same time, people go where their jobs are. They're not just hanging out on the curb. Those guys are hanging out on the curb is because about 7 a.m., a truck is going to pick them up and they're going to go paint a house or put up a wall or, mow my yard, okay? That's why they're on that corner. They're not homeless. All the homeless are Americans. They were born here, and their parents were born here, and their great-grandparents, and their great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. And most of them are still white. And most people in this country on food stamps and on federal aid and all that are white.
I don't believe you.
The largest number of people on federal programs are white.
That's a Latino conspiracy against white people.
Yeah, I have a conspiracy. Yeah, I know. It's conspiracy theory about Anglos. So they make this stuff up. It is about racism. Okay. So they said that about Jews. They said about Italians and Germans and the Irish back in the day. Now the Irish are saying, and the German descendants of German immigrants, descendants of Irish immigrants, and descendants, for that matter, descendants of Jews
Stephen Miller
are now in this country are saying the same thing about people of color, Latin American. It's really, that's the problem they have. They identify you as if you're brown. So they're not looking for white Anglo Canadians
or Hispanic,
white Anglo British citizens. you know, for for undocumented, they're looking for brown. They are
Profiling.
profiling. Thank you. So this is what happens when I do this. As soon as I get home, I have
You have what?
can I eat during these podcasts, by the way? So
we have a limited time. We only
it's
have
all about racism. It's not about limited resources. We have plenty of land. We can actually fit everybody in this country in like I think there was somebody did some math in a few hundred tall buildings in like in Massachusetts. We could fit everybody, 300 million people in a few very tall buildings in Massachusetts. We fit everybody in this country. We have, what about protected land? We have plenty. Yes, we have protected land, but we have plenty of empty land. California is mostly a desert, and about 45 million people live there. Okay, so yes, we can put people in Nevada and Idaho and Arizona and West Texas. Oh, come on, West Texas is. How about all these empty counties in Texas where there's nobody? So that's just an argument that it's a made up argument based on racism. Everything we look goes back down to racism. And we don't need to change the Constitution. The Constitution is there for a very clear purpose, because you're right. It actually protects those brown kids now. It protects those kids who are Asian. It protects a lot of kids who are born in this country who may get profiled as African Americans were profiled over 100 years ago. And so they have the same rights as anybody else because they're born here, and those rights cannot be taken away from them. That's as for all those people who love their Second Amendment, they better love their 14th Amendment. But you know what? They don't love it because it makes the country more brown, they say. I don't know.
So in the last 15 minutes, we're going to solve racism. And the way that I would solve racism is that as much as problematic as the Second Amendment is actually the greatest amendment that I would even call a commandment. Once the different populations have arms, then you can't mess with them. If you look at Nazi Germany, when they were oppressing the Jews were poets, they were writers, they were accountants, they were lawyers. None of them had weapons. There was a group that fought against the Nazis, but they were overrun. So in America, having the ability to defend yourself actually protects you as a community from being lynched, from being overrun. In some cases, I know Jose's shaking his head, but I want to see what Yama would say. All these pacifists in my show. What do you think?
Well, I mean, you do make a good point. One time I went over to Carter's, which is a gun store here in Texas, and I went just to see. Well, it's more like a hunting store. Well, let's be honest. It's the gun store. So I went over to see, what hunting place looks like. And after being there for 10 minutes, I understood why you should be armed. The reason is the people that go to those gun stores. Because I went there and I saw the look on these people's eyes, and it was like wide-eyed, kind of like I'm ready to kill anybody that's not like me kind of look. And I said, holy crap, that guy's going to get weaponized, or that guy's going to get a weapon? Holy crap, no wonder. Those guys are the reasons to get a weapon. Not the whatever the media says, the crime people, right? No, hell no. The reason why you get one is because of all the people that actually do the mass shootings. So in that aspect, yeah, I guess the Second Amendment it gives you that opportunity to protect yourself from all the crazies that have guns. Okay.
There's good and bad people in every culture. So the way
that's the thing, that the Second Amendment is to be able to, and when I say protect, is not protect, is to be able to shoot back, because you're not really protecting yourself. Okay, you're shooting back at the if it happens. It's just having the opportunity to fight back with a gun and whatever.
It equalizes the situation, and that would be the libertarian in me that would say it equalizes the situation. Now everybody can defend themselves, but to me is a access to things. I think that the greatest thing of America is that we have access to money, to vehicles, to food, something that in other countries would be limited. That capitalism in America allows you that if you work enough hours and do stuff, you might have access to the same things as other people. So then there's people who are always going to have more power and more influence, but there are certain things that put you in a certain status that it equalizes the situation. I'm just throwing things out there. Jose's shaking his head. I want him as the bleeding heart liberal in the group. I want him to like destroy my argument.
Well, there's no data out there. Show me a piece of data that says that you're any safer than me because you have a gun, own a gun. I'm not saying you do, or that I don't own a gun. And this whole thing about equalizing, it's kind of the romantic television movie thing where like, you know, someone comes in with a gun and you're ready with your gun and you know, and you're a sharpshooter and you hit that guy's gun right out of his hand and no one gets hurt and everybody survives, right?
The Lone Ranger.
Never happens in your world. Cops, okay, can't get that guy. We had multiple situations lately where we had these shooters, mass shooters who killed cops or seriously injured cops. Or the other day, right? What was that recent shooting where the cops killed another cop? Okay, this was just the other day, a few weeks ago. Whatever that the restaurant was in California. I lose track. There's too many. The point is, friendly fire during this mass shooting killed the cop. That's just a fact. So this is what happened. The Second Amendment is there. The Second Amendment, if you read it, and the way I read it, straight up, it has to do with militias. Back then, the militias were very important for the single fact. If you look at the historical, and I have a degree in history, historical, to keep the slaves down, keep the slaves under control. So he had groups of guys with, most people didn't have guns, even back then. It's that. So the militia had guns. So it was a group of people in the town that had guns, make sure, and they were made up for other things. They were made up to, be activated eventually, in times of war, whatever. But that was the thing, a regulated, since the word is regulated militia, okay? Now, over the years, including the Supreme Court has expanded those rights, but they're still limited. That's why, if they were so free, we would be able to just walk around in every state with guns, have them open carry, right? And are we pretty close in Texas? We kind of are, but we're not. So the issue is there's plenty. I work in a school. You cannot walk in with a gun. It's still not. You can't. So it's not that clear cut, the Second Amendment, right? So the issue that I have is if you look at gun ownership in America, minorities are less likely to own a gun than whites in this country. Blacks, Hispanics are less likely. Native Americans, Asians are less likely to own a gun. We have more guns than we have. We have 300 million, over 300 million guns, more guns than people in this country. I don't own a gun. I don't know anybody in my family owns a gun. I don't have any close friends that own a gun. I had a girlfriend who had a gun. She was Anglo that shot it was practice, and then she got rid of the gun. She liked to shoot guns. Nothing against that.
So you know why minorities don't have guns?
The what?
You know why minorities don't have guns?
Because exactly. Legally, they're forbidden from having guns.
It's not the reason that you think. Usually people would say, well, the reason they don't have guns is because if they catch you with a gun, they usually assume that you are the suspect. The reason that minorities, especially immigrants, don't have guns is because we believe in the system. We believe that the police is there to protect you. All these people who have arsenals in their homes, they don't believe in the system. They actually think that the system is there to destroy them, and they have to protect themselves from the system.
Right.
So
And
who's
look,
more patriotic?
And let me just finish that thought. I don't think I walked on this one, stepped on you, but just finish that thought. If we go back to the people, so the fear factors is going on with these people. So these individuals, like the guy who shot up the church in near San Antonio last year, year before last, he had like what? He had like 27 guns or 50 guns, whatever. These guys that individually have a ridiculous amount of guns. So this is what's going on. If you are in Sweden, if you are in Norway, oh, what is it? Is it Sweden, Norway, Netherlands? One of those countries. They have a really high rate of gun ownership, but they don't shoot each other up. On the other hand, you go look at England, very low, extremely low gun ownership. But the government is not trying to attack anybody. Nobody fears their government, okay? I don't fear my government. Honestly, I fear those rednecks with 27 guns, you know, and if I guess, so do I believe in the system to a certain extent? I do believe in the system, but I also know that a gun is not going to make me safer. That is an illusion. Having a gun is not going to make me any safer. It's not going to protect me because there's going to be a situation. I've never had a gun pointed at me ever, but I've been mugged 3 different times in Houston. 3 different times in my lifetime. Once they knocked me out, and just 10 years ago, 10 years ago, around here off of Maine. My only point is, it's like, I didn't feel like, oh, I should carry a gun. And none of those guys that held me up and robbed me had a gun. You know, I was fearful for my life otherwise, but none of those guys pointed a gun at me. So you're not gonna, and I don't think I would have, and if I had a gun, they could have turned the gun on me. There was 3 or 4 of them every time, you know? So I think that that there's so much misinformation and actually some of the misinformation that the gun nuts and the gun lobby, because at the end of the day, it's only about selling guns in America. So when Trump became president, fact, gun sales have gone down since Trump's been president. All of a sudden, we're a safer country. Oh my goodness, we're not. All these angles have stopped buying guns. These rednecks in Texas not buying as many guns. When Obama became president, it was a surge. So they want to scare Anglos, so they'll buy more guns. It's just about guns. They don't actually care about your safety. The NRA doesn't care about anybody's safety. They are an arm for the gun lobby, the gun manufacturers, and the Second Amendment sells guns for them. That's all it is. And so it's got nothing to do with safety or protection.
But now they believe in the system.
Those with guns then are likely to be murdered. They shoot themselves. They commit. Guns are the #1 way that people commit suicide. Not hanging, not anything, not drowning themselves in the bathtub or drugs. They shoot themselves.
But back to the subject, the reason that they are not buying guns now that they have a white president that represents them is because they feel safe and they feel they believe in the system again. They believed in the system in the 50s when everybody looked like them, but then when you have a minority or someone that threatens the stuff, then they don't believe in the system. Everything's going to crap. We need to take the government back. And then this idea of immigrants or people that look different or have different worldviews, it goes back to tribalism where, but I can say that we chose to come to America. America for me is the land of opportunity. And my big beef with progressives is that they portray America as this hellhole where all laws and everything is just a facade. There's actually the most corrupt place in the world, and that you should be ashamed of being an American. And what they do is they actually feed those type of people who are nationalistic because they say, well, if you guys hate America so much, get out of here. Or you know, usually new migrants gravitate towards progressive ideas because they want rights and they want freedoms and stuff like that. And they're like, well, those guys need to get out too because they're not patriotic and nationalistic like we are. So this self-hatred, instead of saying America has the potential to be the greatest place, America has the ability and the laws established to push us to greater heights, there's all this criticism and all this antagonism towards the place that allows us to even complain and to even have the ability to make a case for anything. that you don't have in other countries. So we would end the show with, what are we fighting for? Are we fighting for the ability to have great opportunities and a better life in America? Or are we fighting for the power to be able to tell people what to do? Are we fighting to kick people out who are nationalistic and who are xenophobic? How do we turn it around where we all work together? Because it goes back to the politics and the sectarianism and the caste system, where everybody has an agenda, when the only agenda that we all agree on is that we can live free. Do you guys even believe that ideal of being free in America is even true anymore? Or has it just been so politicized that we're just trying to survive? Yama, what do you think?
Well, I was going to say that education, first of all, going to the first point before you ask that question, is it just education, just opening the eyes, cultural education. I mean, just getting everybody to get to know the other people. I mean, we do live in an ocean of Anglo-Saxon culture. Let's be honest, okay? And everybody, you can see that on TV and all that kind of stuff. It's now opening so people can see, or the wasps can actually see outside of their own culture. And when that starts to happen, when you start understanding the people of other cultures, that's like, okay, now I know where you're coming from. Now I know where you're coming from. That is, in my opinion, is the way it starts. You start actually helping each other out. And one of the things about what makes a state work is everybody pulling toward the same goal, which is, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's universal. Okay, it's not a U.S. thing. It's a universal thing. Okay, and oh dang, I just lost track. But mainly, it's just knowing about the other cultures and seeing what they got going on, and not be afraid. The people that are coming up, the millennials or whatever, they have such an open mind about other cultures that's going to change, hopefully, if they're the ones that get into power. How some people, or the majority of the people, see the world. In fact, in the U.S., I believe the majority of the people see the world differently. It's just your stereotypical ignorance, which are everywhere in the U.S., everywhere in the world, that just kind of are louder. And just like everybody says now, with the orange clown, with the annoying orange, it's just louder here. And all over the world is now the right, the right wing, I guess, is a little bit louder. But the reality is, the majority of the people are really open to knowing more people and other cultures. I'll go for it, Jose. All you.
Yeah, I mean, a couple different things here. So, and I just will backtrack quickly and talk about this whole free market thing. We have this idyllic view that somehow our system is the perfect system economically and otherwise, government. Okay, so we have a Republican system here in terms of, we elect representatives at every level. People are, and they were. It's not democracy where we all vote on everything, right? It's not some kind of ancient Greek democracy where every individual has to say so in decision making. So we talk about this being a great country. It is a great country, but there's other great countries, and the people live in them think they're great. People live in Mexico and in Argentina think their country is great, and they're staying there. There's hundreds of millions of people staying in those countries. Only a few of those are trying to get over here. In England, they have a parliamentary system there, and they don't have a constitution. It's all based on a whole bunch of laws, mixed laws they pass in the parliament, and they have a great country in England. They have a great country in France and so forth. In Spain, economic issues, but they have a great country. We don't have a pure free market. We haven't had a pure free market since probably the days of the Pilgrims or something in this country. There's no, and there's other countries that are probably more free than we are. We have a mixed economy that is, it has parts of socialism. Everything has to do with the, that what we call welfare and systems that benefit people that are at one time or another need income for food or need unemployment, and we if we had a purely free market system, we'd look more like some other countries in the world, like India or even Mexico, really. So we have plenty of things in the system that protects people who are less educated. Oh, we have free education, which is not necessarily possible in every country in the world, up through, at least through the 12th grade. And so this sort of idealized view that we have the perfect mix. There's a great series of articles in the New York Times, I think it's continuing, they started a few weeks ago, about China and how China is about to become, the biggest economy in the world. They're like second right now to us, and how they have a higher percentage of home ownership than we do. They have a higher percentage of literacy. They have a percentage of people with college degrees, percentage in the United States, okay? And we have lower than other parts of the world too, Europe or whatever, European countries, we should say. So all these things, we are not number one in the world at all. We may have the largest economy, but not for much longer. But China is a communist country. It continues to be an authoritarian country that oppresses its people, that controls, religious views, that controls the internet. They have their own internet. They have their own, social media, all this kind of stuff. They lock up all kinds of people for all kinds of reasons. Stuff we don't even know about. It's so bad there for those people. But there's also many people who, most people are if you play with the rules. And a lot of those Chinese people are fine with that. They've decided to say, we're fine have an authoritarian ruler, a system here, a communist system. And by the way, it's a mixed too. It's a mixed communist, authoritarian. They do control certain sectors. They control, the intellectual property and, what corporations do, allow ownership by the state. But there's also a huge mix of free market, which has been very successful for their people, for individuals. And so what we have is very great, but there's other citizens that work quite great for its people. Do we have more freedom than most other countries? That again is arguable. Do we have more freedom than Mexico? I don't know about that. Do we have more freedom than Russia? Yes, they'll lock you up if you speak against Putin. Okay, they don't lock you up, against the prime minister in England or in Spain. So anyway, so that's where we are.
Jose, they'll shoot you in Mexico if you're a reporter and you talk about crime or you talk about corruption. So
that is part of the institutionalized
that's a consequence
violence.
of
freedom. Personally, you're getting shot by the organized crime is shooting you. Also, yes, you can, and often there's a lot of corruption in Mexico. Exactly. So they don't have the rule of law like we have in America. So we made a deal, right? We're gonna follow the rules, right? Other countries don't follow the rules. It's a different culture. I agree with that. But individual freedom exists, within limits in just about most countries. Unfortunately, you may have freedom, but not any food or a job or an education, right? So freedom itself, I hear this all the time, that song, right? God bless the USA. At least, I'm an American. Well, at least I know I'm free. But what if you don't have an education or access to other resources or food or enough food?
You're not in an internment camp like you are in China if you're a Muslim.
Nothing if you don't have those things.
But in China, you're in an internment camp. And in Cuba, you have the best doctors, but you can't speak against the government either. So there's always good and bad things of any system.
There's a trade-off. There's a trade-off. But as I'm going to say again, China is doing quite well, and they're going to continue to do quite well, and their system is working. Unfortunately, they don't have freedom.
Okay, so you have a house, but you can't speak out, and you can't be of certain religions or certain orientations or whatever. So then it goes back to, is the culture of Latin America a culture that can survive without the U.S. and the influence of the U.S.? The one thing that growing up in Mexico, the two cities that I grew up in, they were in love with America. It was, everybody wore American clothes, everybody wanted to be American food and stuff like that. And then now they've been overrun by American culture to the point where you can't even find little Mexican items made out of wood. Everything comes from China or it comes from America. So the culture is being, I don't know if polluted or watered down with outside influences, just like it is here to some people. So going back to our subject of Latin American history, do you think that places like, I think it's Peru and Bolivia, places like that, where they've become more independent from America, even Venezuela and Cuba, that they have kept their culture more pure? Or is it just part of modern life that everybody's influencing each other and taking and giving ideas to one another? What do you think, Yama?
I think that the U.S. Is doing what it should be doing, as in let the other countries be, let them grow. Because for many years, the U.S. has been in the soup of every country, and if it doesn't look like it's gonna go their way, they're gonna be messing with it. So I'm glad that the countries like Venezuela and Peru and Bolivia and whatever country is all of a sudden saying, yeah, you know what? All of Latin America, we're saying, you know what? Thank you, but no thank you. All right? This is not the 1800s. This is not the early 1900s. All right? This is 2000s. We can do it by ourselves. In fact, we want to do it by ourselves. Go and mess up another part of the world. Go to the Middle East and mess those people up. We got our own thing. Okay? Just like the Chilambalam said, there's going to be a moment where South America or the Americas, we're going to grow back. We're going to shine again. All right? The only thing we need is not having these people in our lives. Let us do our thing. You know? Let us mess up if that's what needs to be. Okay? That's how countries grow. But you know, that's how countries grow. And I'm glad that the U.S. for the past, I don't know how many years, they've forgotten about. When I say forgotten, they're like, okay, well, we're gonna focus on ISIS and all that stuff because of the petroleum. Good. That means we can quote unquote grow. And yes, there's gonna be crap. There's gonna be corrupt politicians. There's gonna be, like you said, murder. You know, journalists getting murdered. But guess what? The U.S. back in 1920s, 1910s. What do you think that was? Where do you think Al Capone came from? Mexico? All right. Ever heard of Prohibition? That was your first cartels right there. All right. That was your first illegal hardcore stuff. All right. So the U.S. already went through it. Let us go through it. Let us figure it out. Colombia already kind of like maneuvered it. Yeah, it had a little bit of help, I guess, from the U.S. of sorts, but the reality is, we as in Latin America, we gotta be able to grow, okay, by ourselves without having people, you know, other countries moving stuff so it benefits them, okay. So that's my point of view on that.
So we're gonna end with something that I've shared with people in the past. I guess when I was more idealistic as a young man, and then I still want to hear the John Leguizamo story that Jose never told us 3 shows ago. So we'll end with that one. But do any of you guys have like a Moses complex where, I know Jose was born here, but you know, you go to another country and you learn other things, and then you would go back and free your people. So I would ask this to you directly, Yama. Have you ever considered that, you know, being in America for a while?
Let me make it clear. I wasn't born here. I don't know where you got that idea.
Oh, you came to America too?
Yeah, I came to America.
I thought you were second generation. You're incorrect.
I was a little bit.
So
I don't know how it ever came up. I'm sorry. I don't know if we ever. Never
you're a dreamer.
You probably just assumed that I probably assumed that we discussed it, but
you're a dreamer.
yeah, I'm a dreamer.
So both of you guys, have you ever thought like, okay, now I've been educated on different cultures, educated about different you know, political systems. Maybe I can go back to the motherland and liberate my people and bring them to greater heights, or should I be part of the brain drain and stay over here and all the good people are fleeing because there's so much corruption and issues in Mexico? Have you guys ever thought about that?
Well, me personally, I think when I transitioned to from Mexico, from the U.S. high school to Mexico college, being college in Mexico, I did kind of see, you know, like, okay, I'm here. I have a little, I have at least, you know, car, civics, and all that kind of stuff, you know, that in Mexico City you don't have. And I did have that kind of mentality or point of view, but then I saw that there is, at least in Mexico City, where I'm seeing, there are a lot of people that have really, really worked to change. Okay, they've really worked hard to change the way the system is. Okay, as in, no, they're not going to pay off the cop. They'll go to the hey, I want my ticket. Like, people that know the law, they're like, hey, listen, you cannot do this. Give me my ticket, and then I'll take care of the ticket instead of whatever it is. A lot of ignorance was the government took a lot of advantage of the ignorance of the people. But from 20 years to now, the people have gotten, it could be the internet, it could be just you know, more ballsy or whatever. They're like, we're not taking it. We know the rights, we know what we'd have to do, and even if we did live in the U.S., we're coming back and we're changing people. But it's what I've seen. It's the the people, at least in Mexico, have been. Seems like, you know what, we go to the U.S. perhaps for shopping or whatever, or perhaps we were 1 year in college there, and we come back and it's like, we're gonna follow the system that is in Mexico, but just follow it to the T. You know, it's like, stop at the red. Let another person go. You know, little things like just putting the directional light. Okay, that thing right there in Mexico, and so you can tell the other person, "Now I'm going in there," and they let you go. That right there is a huge, at least cultural shift, because it used to be you don't even do that. You just go in there. So I've seen people in Mexico that have at least, and I'm not going to say a certain level of education, but that do know that, hey, you know what, I should be following the rules. It will make it better. Jose, all you.
Well, you know, just to again piggyback on, I just wanted to say something earlier, and I know we're gonna wrap it up, but I totally agree with Yama on the fact. The thing is, a lot of the problems in Latin America are directly related to U.S. intervention over the last couple of 100 years. We just couldn't stay out of Latin America, and we went in with troops. We went in with a corporate control, private control of much of the economy. And if Venezuela now or Mexico uses their resources and, you know, leverages that, and they still screw up what they're doing over there, I'm all for self-determination. They need to learn their lessons. And I think there's all this screwing with it that the country's done up through the 70s and 80s. There's so much history of that, and we're probably still messing with these countries. Probably we just don't know about it. But it's not as obvious, it's not as large as it was back then. And so, so that's so important about the self-determination. Then on the subject of, I just lost it. What subject are we on?
You being going back and freeing the people, or teaching them a new way to do things to make Mexico better.
Yeah, like Quetzalcoatl.
I have this. So I have this. I used to have this when I was a kid. I had this dream that dream or fantasy. I guess the better word is a fantasy. That I would go back. So that all these presidents, everybody in the cabinet in Mexico, they all get educated in America, right? They get educated at Harvard and Yale and whatever. They get their, many of them come, and because they all come from very, well-to-do, wealthy families. And so they've always been in that level, just like in America. Most our presidents end up being from a certain status, economic status and educational status, and so I had this thing. It's like, it was the kid that I would get an education in America and I'd go back to Mexico and become president. It's a kid. And it's this kind of a rescue mentality, and some men have with women, right? In that that we know it better, that we know that we can fix it somehow, that whatever problems you have, honey, I'm gonna save you, honey. And maybe we feel the same way about Mexico or Latin America, that we can say, can we be supportive economically in some, maybe put a few $1 billion into this or that, in the right way, to stimulate the economy in these countries, of course. But after that, we need to just stay out of it. We need to stay out of it, because I think we cause more problems by messing with it, and then those problems come to us, and so they become part of our problems. And and let me just say this again. We're very concerned about what's going on in Latin America because of our ancestry. But there's problems all over the world. And where do we interfere? Where do we put, who needs to get a little bit more? And again, I totally agree that we put a lot more emphasis. Leave Latin America alone. Let's put some emphasis on these terrorists, because that's the point. That's the point. There are issues that are a lot more immediately dangerous or whatever. All this stuff about terrorists coming from Mexico and coming through the southern border, all that stuff is just racist crap, anti-immigrant stuff that has nothing to do with us. Those are just made up to put out there so that the media picks it up and Fox News picks it up and people keep saying it over and over again. So the real issue is, how do we positively influence but not do too much? Because at the end of the day, again, Yama's absolutely correct. We made plenty of mistakes as a country, and hopefully we learn from many of those, economically, government-wise, legally, whatever, the justice system. We just had some reform that's actually kind of positive, that's gonna, some of these drug crimes are gonna become a lessened or whatever, non-violent drug crimes. So yes, there are a lot of issues, but we can't solve all these issues. We don't know. I don't know the day-to-day politics of Mexico. I don't know the day-to-day cultural issues of Mexico. I don't know any Mexican women. You know what I mean? I don't know what's going on. I don't have time. I'm busy enough worrying about what's going on in America. So why would I know what's best for Mexico? Anyway.
Okay, so tell us the story of John Leguizamo that you were going to tell us when we started.
So actually, so I'll tell you the story, and there you go. That's not so much. But actually, there's actually a couple of stories related here. But so many years ago, I actually didn't know who John Leguizamo was. This is about over 20 years ago. I watched TV off and on. Yeah, I didn't know who he was. I kind of knew who he was, but I didn't know who he was, right? It's kind of like, oh, he's a comedian. And I think that's before he really blew up, and right before he had the TV show on, was it Fox? Something like that. Which I did enjoy, and it was more because it was an ensemble cast that were funny. But I got to work. He had a stage play that he wrote. It was a one-man show for himself, right? And God, I just forgot what it's called. It was got Spicorama. So you know the word spic. You know the racist spic.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was Spicorama, and it's kind of probably playing on some of what he's doing now with that book or new series or whatever. So it was really well. And so I never actually saw the actual play, but I got to work on the production of the local Southwest premiere of Spicorama's a Talento Bilingüe, TBH, over there in Second Ward. When what's his name was still over there, the actor, well-known actor, Richard Reyes, who was also in a couple, I was in at least one film with him, TV series with him, miniseries. But so he was running it, but it was a really fun play to do. And I remember thinking, so John Leguizamo is what? He's Colombian? What is he?
Colombian American, yeah.
Colombian American. He's not Mexican American. But a lot of the show. Has anybody seen Spicorama? Have you seen this? I think there's like a YouTube version of it.
The show you were talking about is called House of Bugging on Fox.
Yeah,
and then he did a special called Spicorama.
Yeah, but the Spicorama was the one man show. And so what was great about the show is that his one man show is he actually deals with all these stereotypes in some way about. You got the fatherless Latino who almost, he could be like any Latino. He's not particularly Colombian American. He seems more than anything Chicano, right? Or maybe Puerto Rican, but he's kind of fatherless, and he's got this love-hate with his dad. He's a hip hopper, and this is the late 1990s when this. I got to work on this play, and I did sound and lights, and we had a guy who, a local actor. I don't know if I ever saw him again in anything, but he was so good. He really embodied this character. But I remember thinking at the time, and so yeah, John Leguizamo was not actually in this at all. But I remember thinking about the time that he had captured all these stereotypes in like one man show, made entertaining. You laughed, you cried a little bit, but at the end of the day, there wasn't a lot of substance to it. And if you look at when I think about art, and I think about, and this is true, and by the way, I'm working on a film next year. It's happening. I got funding. That's the good news. I told David knows about this. So our story, our American, our Latino, Hispanic, Mexican American, whatever story we have, has not been told well enough yet. It hasn't been. There's not enough. There's not people, creative people. I think the people, I like Coco, by the way. I thought it was not, certainly there are elements you can say are stereotypical, but I think they were treated in a tasteful way. And I think it did honor to the Day of the Dead, the true Mexican Day of the Dead. So I actually really admire that film, and I'm surprised that there's angles involved in writing it. I shouldn't be, but because I know there was a Latino that was involved in it too, in terms of creating a story. But we have so many stories to tell, and they haven't been told, and they're told. Yes, we can have humor in it, but they're not fully fleshed out. We are fully fleshed out people. We're not comedians. Jews, again, historically, stand-up comedians, right? And they tell that story, but they've expanded into everything. Okay, Italian Americans, vaudeville, all that. That was the home of immigrants, new immigrants, making other immigrants laugh, right? And we're still clowns. You know, Cheech and Chong, that came up in, I think, the last podcast. That's how people still see us. We got to make them laugh, you know? And so we need to flesh out those stories. There has to be filmmakers and storytellers, and we have to get, there's more. So people like me and you, David, and Yama, we got to get in there. There's more outlets out there. There's Amazon, there's Netflix for production, for putting our stories out there, and we need to come to them stories, or we can put them ourselves on YouTube, put them on there, or we can come together and create this and tell fleshed out, fully human, 360-degree stories, okay, about Hispanics, Mexican Americans, Puerto Ricans. I don't care what it is, but the issue is that those stories aren't being told, and we only have ourselves to blame, I think, at this point, because we can tell those stories. I think we're just not doing it. Thank you.
Okay, well, we can go on forever, so we're gonna end it here. But I do want to bring up the guy who did a mariachi, Robert Rodriguez. He's had an opportunity to do, you know, directors can do all kinds of stuff. So he could have filmed Chicano Life in America or something like that. And instead, he's going with the money, kind of like you said in the beginning of the first show, that people are just interested in money. And then as he's putting Machete out and all this stuff, he's just kind of going with the stereotypes. So he's like the Carlos Mancia of the film directors. If Steven Spielberg made money making fun of Jews, that wouldn't be look favorably. But if a Mexican makes money making fun of Mexicans, that's wonderful. So I think Machete is actually a disservice to the Latino community. What do you think, Yama?
Well, about Robert Rodriguez and his opportunities to actually make very deep films as a quote-unquote Mexican American and all that stuff. Well, I mean, I'll have you. I know he was the director of Spy Kids. I know that Spy Kids is probably like a very low denominator in some sort. But if you think about it, Spy Kids, it's two. Hold on, before we knock it, it's two. The whole family is of Spanish-speaking descent, right? And they're not just little, little kids just shining shoes and stuff or whatever. They're actually, kind of like a James Bond of sorts, okay? Like a Mission Impossible kind of thing. I know, but at least the kids that are there or the family that's there actually are brown, and it's like hardcore mainstream. It's like it's. I think what Robert Rodriguez is trying to say also is like, listen, we're just as one-sided, as shallow as white people. So let us into your shallowness, okay? We also can make crappy, nonsensical, just for money's sake. And as long as it gets them in what you call it, in the mainstream, they're, that's, I think he's doing it like that. It's like, hey, we're not like, we're not bringing this like, oh, Mexican American torch. It's just our normal life. The person that you're walking next to that speaks like you, the only thing is you're just brown. You have Machete, which they actually made there's a band called Plastilina Mosh that made a song called Danny Trejo, honoring Danny Trejo from Machete, and I mean, it's just, I understand what David is saying about having that opportunity and make our culture a little bit stand out, but at the same time, Robert Rodriguez saying is like, listen, this is just normal for me. I watch this, and this, and I'm putting this in the mainstream. So yeah, he's missing some opportunities, but at the same time, what he's trying to say is, just because I'm brown doesn't mean I have to go that way. I'm just as shallow as you white people, or whatever people, not just white, just mainstream people. Jose?
And I just want just to go on there. I do not put all on Robert Rodriguez. Yeah, I don't make him responsible. And we're talking about Mexican Americans, but you know, 3 of the greatest filmmakers in the world right now are Mexican directors, right? Alfonso Cuarón, you know, Guillermo del Toro, and Alejandro
Iñárritu.
Gonzalez. And this is the whole thing. You know what they're doing? They're just making movies. They're making great movies of all kinds of movies. They're just telling a Mexican story or a Hispanic story or whatever. They're telling stories about, you know, an astronaut, a female astronaut, you know, gets stuck in space, right? And they've won Oscars, you know. All 3 of them won Oscars now. They've all been nominated.
I think Guillermo del Toro hasn't.
Alejandro won 2 and Guillermo won 1 just last year, right?
What about
did Cuarón win
Pan's
1?
Labyrinth? I think he got
too,
some.
right? I think they all won, but this is my whole point. So that's really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, but I think what they're doing right now is they're perfect representations of somebody, but they're Mexican as opposed to Mexican American, and so they can't tell that story, right? They can't tell Mexican. They're not a Mexican American. They haven't lived our lives, and so that's the story that I keep thinking about, and that's the one where somebody like Robert Rodriguez has dropped the ball. I don't necessarily blame him for making money, but I do blame him for making really bad movies.
Has anybody seen Roma that just came out on Netflix?
Not yet.
My sister saw it and she was disappointed, but my sister would be the typical kind of uppity Mexican that would like something a little more mainstream, even like almost like a Robert Rodriguez kind of thing. But the thing that disappointed me from Roma and just seeing the trailers is that it talks about Mexico in the 70s, and it is about the tension between rich Mexicans and poor Mexicans, and how so the emphasis is on an indigenous woman who works for the rich Mexican family. I believe the greatest film ever made in Mexico is Amores Perros. And even though it's a really messed up film, I love it because it actually portrays Mexico as it really is. I hear people, they come to me and they're like, hey man, have you ever been to these amazing mansions in your hometown? And I'm like, why would I? If I would have been in the mansions, I would still be hanging out in the mansions.
Exactly.
So Americans have this idea of Mexico, like the Cancuns and the Puerto Vallartas and the fancy places where they visit with their friends, and they don't experience the different levels of poverty, different levels of economic and social systems. And in that movie, you have a conversion of all 3 different things, and how messed up it is in every level. That even if you're rich, you still deal with a lot of corruption and issues. If you're middle class, there's a lot of fear of losing the little bit that you have. And when you're poor, you're desperate. And it just brings all those issues together. And I would love if one of these 3 great directors would tackle the issue of migration, of how you leave everything behind for this dream, and then the dream blows up in your face, or you make it in America, but it takes you a long time to do that, and it's at a great loss. Or that you end up starting a new family because the one back there you either lost, or for some reason people decided to move on. Like all these things that we experience as immigrants are not being documented, and they're not being expressed in any creative way. So it's almost like unfathomable that someone would go through that journey. And there's been little movies here and there that talk about the immigrant experience, but there hasn't been something that has been powerful. And then even looking back at the history of the conquistadors and the native population, there hasn't been a movie that is like not to go back to that, but there hasn't been like a movie about like the Mexican Holocaust. Like there hasn't been a movie about the conquistadors destroying an empire. There hasn't been a movie about slavery in Latin America, other than The Mission. That's another one of my favorite films with Robert De Niro, where they show the tension that the Portuguese had with the slave holders and the church, and the good people and bad people on both sides. So there's been things here and there, but overall, like you said, there hasn't been a thorough documentation of the experience of the people in Latin America and including in the U.S. And it goes back to John Leguizamo's theory that we're invisible, that if you don't document it, or like one of my mentors once told me, if you don't celebrate your culture, nobody else will. So now we have to wait for Disney to feel like it's a marketing strategy that we're gonna get all the Mexicans come buy movie tickets. I think Yama told me that it was like the greatest success in Mexico, the movie. I remember as a kid in Mexico watching these cartoons with Donald Duck and a parrot, and I can't remember. There was a rooster who represented the Mexican, and he was just a typical guy with a sombrero. The parrot was Argentinian, and then Donald Duck was the clueless American.
No, the parrot was Brazilian. It was the Three Amigos.
Okay, so the Three Amigos, you would get the original Three Amigos, you would get these, like the three different types of Americans or
Tres
people.
Caballeros, my bad. Tres Caballeros.
Okay, so you got it was all these. It was kind of like a quick introduction to all of the Americas, and that's all you got. And just like in Coco, Mexicans were portrayed as cowboys or as peasants, and they're still portrayed as cowboys and peasants sitting under a cactus. Like, I don't understand how, there's still no understanding that it's like a civilization, like it's a modern state that doesn't. The worst movie that comes to mind is the Mexican. They go to the filthiest place in Mexico, where it's just like you see those dust things pass by, and it's just
Johnny Depp.
nowhere in the desert. And then you also see that in traffic, where they have a blue filter when they're in America, and they have a red filter when they go into Mexico. And Mexico looks like hell. Also in the Man on Fire.
Yeah.
He goes to Mexico, and they're like dancing like tribesmen ready to kill the only African American in Mexico, and they're all criminals, and it's just unbelievable. So we can have a show only about the way the Latinos are depicted in movies, but again, it goes back to this shallow understanding of the culture, and then going cheap shots like, how can I portray them in the worst light to make a point, to have like this Star Wars light versus darkness kind of thing, and the American is always the victim, and the Mexicans are like the people that they're trying to attack them. This is going to become a second show because there's one point that I want to bring up to Yama, and I want to see what he thinks. Did you ever watch as a child in Mexico? There's a movie about 3 students that go into a town. They're light-skinned Mexican students, and they go to a town in the province of Mexico somewhere, and they get killed by the locals.
Yes.
And it almost looks like what happened during the revolution, where Hidalgo, a criollo, or like in independence, where a criollo, he got all the natives and mestizos together to fight against the Spaniards. But in this one, the Spanish-looking kids get killed by the darker native population. What was the point of that movie?
Well, no, I haven't seen that movie. Where it's light skinned. The one that I know and I did see was the students that went into a small population, and the priest at the in this town thought that these guys were university students that were here to cause trouble, and basically the priest told him, hey, this is not a place where that stuff's gonna happen, so let's go get them out, and they lynched them basically.
That is the movie. Do you remember the name of it?
I don't know. Right now I don't remember. I'm gonna look for it, but it was in the state of Puebla.
And what's the point of the movie, that the traditional Mexicans don't like rebel
Outsiders coming, rebel rousers.
But it was almost like a way to criticize the movement of the 1960s, or
Yep. Well, not to criticize that. It was to criticize the what you call it, the closed-minded people that were afraid of students. The students went to that town because they were gonna. I think they were gonna climb the Iztaccíhuatl, and they were stopping there because that's where they were gonna spend the night, and then from there they were gonna go and climb. And somebody said something that. Oh, and I still remember because when they got to a bar, they started singing El Goya from La UNAM.
This is from the major.
Goya. It's a cheer from the UNAM, and they thought that they were coming here to do all these protests or whatever, or start getting people all riled up, and that's when all hell went loose.
So in Mexico, there's this kind of status quo or traditionalism where if anybody has any radical ideas, they're quickly, deemed communist, deemed, criminals or mafiosos or whatever. So when the last president was being elected, or the current president was running and he didn't win, all my family in Monterrey was scared of him. They're like, that guy is a mobster from Mexico City. He was the mayor of Mexico City. We shouldn't trust him. They were saying that he had ties to guerrilla groups and all that stuff. So it was like they weren't even willing to give a chance to someone who was pushing for reform or for new ideas. Jose, are you familiar with the current president of Mexico and what's been going on?
The name of the movie is called Canoa.
The what?
Sorry, the name. Sorry, Jose. The name of the movie that I was telling you about is called Canoa. It was built in It was made in 75. Sorry, continue.
Do you know much about López Obrador?
No, I know nothing about him. I mean, just you get snippets on I should read. I mean, I just got I've been reading the Times more, New York Times more lately, and I just haven't gotten to the. It's again. I honestly, I'm more concerned about the president here in America. So I don't know. I know that he's more conservative than the last guy. Well, maybe the last guy was also conservative, right? But what is like main gripes? What are some of the issues that he ran on? I don't know. Educate me.
You tell us, Yama. You have a bigger connection to Mexico than me. What do you know about the new president?
Well, about AMLO, what I know is that I mean, the basics is that he's been running for president for the past 20 years, 25 years. He's been running for president. There was one, I think it was when Cedillo became president. He was actually, I mean, there was a huge thing about him actually winning, but Mexican politics all says, no, he didn't win. He was close, but he didn't win. And he protested and he occupied, what you call it, the Zócalo, and for I don't know how many, like for a year, and then he became the mayor of Mexico, and he brought in a lot of populist and social programs that really helped a lot of people. Like, he made a lot of stuff affordable for everybody. He did a lot of, like in Mexico City. In Mexico City, they voted for his party for I don't know how many times consecutively. What I know about him, like for president, is just that he does have a mentality of for the people. And the thing is, he's really showed it with his time being the mayor. Because I mean, if you're mayor of Mexico City, you can handle all of Mexico basically. That's what they say. So he's got a lot of if you want to see a nice report in English, I think John Oliver has a good report on that. And Jose, if you want to keep up on Mexican politics, there's this political satirist called Broso. I like him. Um, he has a weekly podcast every Friday. He talks about what happens during the whole week in politics, and he obviously it's funny, but he says a lot like he just says it like it is. All right, and he every time he just talks about like really go into detail about whatever's going on. So he would be that
How do
would
you
be a
spell
good place
that?
for you to know
Broso.
about
What is it?
AMLO.
He's making fun
It's
of
like
Bozo.
Bozo.
Yeah.
It's like Bozo the clown, but you put an R.
Rozo?
I'll tell you one
R-O-Z-O?
thing. Brozo,
Oh, B-R-O-Z-O. Brozo, like Bozo. Okay,
like
Brozo.
Broso. I'll tell you one thing. I was in Mexico when AMLO got elected. That was the first day. There was the first day that I was in summer vacation in Mexico City. I was at my cousin's house. It was around 8 o'clock when they turned on the TV to see, the procession and all that. And oh no, it's official. AMLO has won. My cousin started to cry, like tears coming down of sadness.
But he's usually a very emotional person, right?
Who, my cousin?
I'm kidding. Tell us more about your cousin.
Well, I don't know, but the thing is that he's like, he looked at me, he goes, "Do you know what this means?" And I'm like, "No." Like, it means that we're screwed. I'm like, "What do you mean we're screwed? Have you heard what this guy's talking?" I was like, "No." Obviously, in a certain social status or stratus, what this person says scares you. But the reality is, what can he really do? Okay? Besides the talking and the actually doing, it's a whole different thing. You know what I mean?
So
That's why.
well, he's barely getting elected, right? He's starting in January.
No. He already took possession the 1st of December.
1st of December of last year or
Nope.
This year?
This year.
So in the last, so it's kind of like Trump or anybody else. We're still waiting to see if he actually is gonna fulfill his campaign promises, right?
Yeah. That's I. In fact, I need to binge watch a lot of Broso to see what's going on, because there's a lot of funny stuff. It's a lot of funny stuff, especially with this whole border wall thing. The AMLO actually said, "You know what?" AMLO said, "If they want to leave, let them leave. That's not our problem anymore."
The people are leaving Mexico to go to America, or who?
Yeah, he said that if people want to leave to wherever they want to go, well, let them leave.
Yeah, thanks to them, because they haven't fixed the country. When Fox got elected, he said it's going to take us 30 years to fix Mexico, and 15 years later, they still haven't fixed anything. So it's really easy to pass on the ball to the next country.
It's like I said before, it's let us figure it out. It'll be little by little, but we're gonna get to it. The U.S. didn't get to have all this just like magic. I mean, they had to mess up. Hell, the U.S. right now still has huge problems, and we want to talk about like drugs and all that kind of stuff. If we want to talk about standard of living, yeah, the U.S. has this, but then again, how did they get it? From whom and all that stuff? Who did they have to kill or subjugate for them to have all this, military or whatever it is? And that's a bunch of other stuff that I want to talk about. But back to AMLO. In my point of view, I'm glad that he was elected just so we can see something different. Just so we can see something different. We already got PAN. We already got the PRI. These are the political groups. Okay, let's see what these guys can do. All right. Yes, they're probably gonna mess up because first year people, they don't know what's going on. But a lot of the people in his cabinet, these are, like we called it, like we say in Mexico, fossils from the 1960s, 1970s that have been in politics all their lives. So in theory, we're like, well, what's the difference here? If you got guys that have been in politics all their lives in the same politics, how the hell are these going to change? No, you change if you have new people, if you have young people that have been out, That's when Fox came into power, he brought in a lot of people that were used to, just like Jose said, studying in the U.S. but actually wanting to implement U.S. ideas or open-minded ideas. For example, when Fox came to power, I actually one of the ideas that they had was, okay, we're gonna import cars. To get a car permit, instead of being in the border, you know what? Let's put them over at the consulates. And I worked there for 2 years. All right. Why? So we can stop corruption in the border, stop harassing our nationals, co-nationals, and the people that got hired believed it wholeheartedly. Yeah, we're here at the consulate. We are representing, and it's the new change. Unfortunately, there's just some things that are very hard to change, and I mean, in the border itself. But in the consulates, we did our work, we did our job, and we did it really, really well. So successfully that they had a permanent office here in Houston.
Hey guys, I know we've gone long, but I have one last question, and then we've finalized our series, and we're done altogether. It's been a pleasure having you guys on the show. Have you guys been hearing about the crazy stuff going on in Tijuana? Not only is the caravan, according to some people, the caravan of immigrants, they decided to go through Tijuana instead of go through Laredo or a closer route, because there's a conspiracy theory or some reports that they want to get to California because California, you can just get all kinds of free stuff, and I don't believe that. But the mayor of Tijuana is actually like a Mexican Trump and hates these immigrants, and no one wants to say that there is discrimination in Mexico against immigrants from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, and that there's actually been fights, and that they're trying to kick them out, and that the locals of Tijuana are chanting, lock them up or send them back, just like in a Trump rally. Have you guys heard that, or is that just crazy stuff coming out?
That's what I've seen is you get the boisterous people are the ones that get the screen time. All right, it's that simple. The majority of the people at the border, they're like, listen, I want to get to work also. Okay, I want to do my job. We feel for you guys because I'm pretty sure, because I have family members that have gone through the same thing. We want to help you. We want to help you. And yeah, you should probably do have some right-wing nuts that are like, hey, you guys got to go back, which is totally fine. I get it, but is not the main. I mean, I guess if you're a town of so many people and all of a sudden you get an influx of people, doesn't matter who it is, there is going to be like certain things going on because you're not used to that traffic or just having people, this amount of people. But no, we're not like that. Yes, we do have a little bit of a I guess superiority complex, but we're not pieces of shit. Okay. In fact, today I heard that there are nonprofits in Mexico. No, that the government itself, the Mexican government, has given provisionary visa status to the migrants.
That's true. True.
And just giving them these quote unquote protections so they don't get kicked out,
Yeah.
which is I think it's a big middle finger to what the or annoying Orange is doing, in my opinion.
Right.
And I mean, that again, we do